Respects, greetings of peace and love. I am His Imperial Magnanimity and His Holiness, the most prudent Emperor Maruhonga. I am the High Priest of Wakanda Imperial Priesthood de Jure Divino. In addition, I am the Chief Justice or Chief Arbiter for Wakanda Imperial Postal Court, bond number 312918. In addition, I'm Marshal for that court. Now, today's installment is actually a continuation of Moors and Freemasonry Part 1. It will be good for an individual who is watching this one to actually go watch the prior video or the previous video. It'll give you a better clarity of where I'm taking this one and where I'm picking off at. So, what I left off at was the reading or the beginning to reading of Liber Baka 303. That's Liber space Baka space 303. It is titled The Confessions of a Real Illuminati Agent. So this is gonna be really good. This specific document that I'm about to read, I actually got exposed to back in I would have to say 2017, 2018. It's actually the document that I read that led me during my journey at that time to join the United Washita Deducted Munyamur Nation. At that time as well, take the path as an ancient Free Moorish Rite Freemason under the tutelage of the Supreme Grand Commander Alim Al-Bey El-Day. So respects to the ancient Free Moorish Rite Freemasonry, respects to those brothers. And at that time of my life, again about 5 years ago, this is what I got exposed to at that time, which led me to even be wearing something like this in the now. It's all in respects to the truth. I am neutral. I stand with the truth exclusively. So when as I read this, chew the meat and spit out the bones. But again, this is some high level truth. So respects, peace, and love to all. I'm gonna go ahead and begin reading. Again, this is Moors and Freemasonry Part 2. If you haven't watched the first one, you're not gonna get where I'm coming from, but please do. Now I'm gonna continue. So again, Liber Baka 303, The Confessions of a Real Illuminati Agent. It begins with, in addition to the all-seeing eye, satanic Illuminati magic is symbolized by the five-pointed star of the Freemasons, who continued the Baphometic rites of the heretical Knights Templar. Historical records strongly suggest that the Templars used the five-pointed star to symbolize the greater Kabbalistic mysteries because of their intimate association with Oriental wisdom. This rather misleading term is still a very important part of the Western mystery tradition. It is the reason the Illuminati called their Memphis Rite-inspired Templar movement Ordo Templi Orientis, or OTO, that is, the Order of Oriental Templars. One should never take the secret agenda of the OTO for granted. The record books of history strongly suggest that the OTO is part of a real Illuminati conspiracy to place a Gnostic Catholic priest on the throne of the Vatican. This is something that almost happened in the early 1900s. In the early 1900s, Cardinal Mariano Rampallo del Tendaro almost became the Pope. This mysterious Italian cardinal not only was a Memphis Rite Freemason of the highest degree, he was also a very distinguished member of the Papist Gnostic Catholic Church and the OTO. According to Leo Zagami, a charismatic Memphis Rite Freemason of the highest degree, the Italian branch of the OTO currently plays a major role in the global criminal network controlled by the black nobility and the Illuminati. Leo Zagami is also very correct when he says that in its highest degrees, the European OTO has its initiates make pacts with the devil, and then in parentheses, Baphomet. Anyone who thinks the real OTO is a white light organization like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn is very deluded. Like the Bavarian Illuminati movement from which it evolved, European OTO has always been very anti-Christian or satanic. Many people do not realize that the European OTO, which has absolutely nothing to do with the Caliphate OTO, is a prominent part of the global criminal network, founded by the black nobility branch of the Illuminati. The records indicate that it was the Hispano-Moorish black nobility that created the Italian mafia, and the European OTO adheres in every way to the principles of the mafia, which behind closed doors has intimate ties to the Jesuits, the P2 Lodge, and the Satanic Knights of Malta. There is no form of international crime in which the European OTO does not play a major role. In fact, the European OTO has Illuminati cells all over the Caribbean, South America, and Mexico. These Illuminati cells function as very powerful drug cartels that specialize in ritual murder in honor of the Prince of Darkness. In some places in Latin America, drug cartels with direct and indirect ties to the Satanic Illuminati are part of the Afro-Cuban religion called Palo Mayombe, that is Palo space. And this fact reflects their connection to the devil, the Holy Grail, and the Illuminati. Now, before I go further, I meant to actually state that this document is actually 77 pages long. It has no illustrations, no pictures. It's just straight text. So I'm not going to read 77 pages at this moment. What I'm actually going to do is read maybe about the first 9 to 13 pages, and then I'll have the link in the description so anyone can come read this for themselves, because it's a lot of reading. But I'm just going to read the first 13 pages, just about picking up where I left off. Mexico's newest drug cartel, Monica Villamanzar, declares, quote, "The cartel is like a secret society. The Mexican Templars have an initiation ritual which apparently includes dressing up like knights from the Middle Ages and performing blood pacts," end quote. As it is to be expected, the European OTO and all of its Illuminati cells in the continental Americas that function as powerful drug cartels are covered in great secrecy. To take Masonic initiation into the European OTO and then to turn around and reveal its satanic ceremonies to the public is to be ritualistically murdered according to the magical traditions of an old Masonic tradition, supposedly dating back to the Knights Templar and the Inquisition era. The secret blood rites of the European OTO bring to life the diabolical essence of the Oriental wisdom perfected in the 1700s by shadowy Adam Weishaupt. But what really is the Oriental wisdom symbolized by the five-pointed star ceremonial magicians of the highest order believe has the power to turn men and women who come from medieval Templar bloodlines into bona fide Illuminati? Question mark. For the record, and again, this is all me quoting this. For the record, Oriental wisdom is what the Masonic Illuminati initiates who possess OTO degrees call Moorish science. Contrary to popular belief and urban legend, the most advanced form of Moorish science has absolutely nothing to do with the quasi-Islamic teachings of Noble Drew Ali. In the eyes of the Masonic Illuminati initiates, Noble Drew Ali made the mistake of confusing the light seen by all neophytes with the light of the Magus, who is a high priest and prophet of the New World Order. No initiate who is part of the real Illuminati conspiracy recognizes Noble Drew Ali as a prophet of Moorish science. Within the secret societies of the Illuminati, the modern prophet of Moorish science is Paschal Beverly Randolph. Many of the Illuminati practices of the European OTO derive from Randolph, but are used in a very diabolical way. The most esoteric form of Moorish science is based on the practical Kabbalah or necromancy. This is because the Satanic Illuminati system founded by Adam Weishaupt taught the practical Kabbalah or necromancy in the higher Masonic degrees. Adam Weishaupt taught his initiates how to achieve the highest illumination or gnosis by making blood pacts with the devil and 72 Goetia demons. The way I am describing my apologies, I had to readjust the screen. Picking up on the quote. The way I am describing the Illuminati order is not that much different than how it was then viewed by the Masons and Rosicrucians who founded the New World Order. Even President George Washington said the Illuminati order is based on something very diabolical, meaning its initiates venerated Lucifer and Satan within the mafia system or the global criminal network founded by the Hispano-Moorish black nobility. In 1778, President George Washington, this is incorrect because he wasn't president at that time, however, but again, we're going to keep reading. In 1778, George Washington said the following in an attempt to cover up the true intentions of Masons and Moors working in the interest of the New World Order. It is not my intention to doubt that, and this is a quote, it is not my intention to doubt that the doctrines of the Illuminati and the principles of Jacobinism had not spread into the United States. On the contrary, one is no more truly satisfied of this fact than I am. The idea that I meant to convey was that I did not believe that the lodges of Freemasons in this country had, as societies endeavored to propagate the diabolical tenets of the first, or the pernicious principles of the latter, if they are susceptible of separation. End quote. The diabolical orientation of the Weishaupt's Illuminati system can be attributed to the higher degrees in Freemasonry. In Behold a Pale Horse, William Cooper informs, quote, in 1826, an American Freemason wrote a book revealing Masonic secrets entitled Illustrations of Freemasonry. One of the secrets he revealed is that the last mystery at the top of the Masonic pyramid is the worship of Lucifer. End quote. The mystery of the five-pointed star is what connects the Illuminati and the European OTO to the Moors, who specialize in blood pacts with Satan and the 72 Goetia demons. Moorish demonologists in medieval Europe and in the early Americas validate many conspiracy theories about the leaders of the New World Order being agents of the Prince of Darkness. The Moorish contribution of the New World Order and the real Illuminati conspiracy has been noted a writer. In The Masons and the Moors, Mehmet Sabin Hadin reminds, quote, the kingdom of Morocco under the leadership of Sidi Muhammad bin Abdullah, known as King Muhammad III, was the first country to recognize the United States of America as an independent nation in 1777. This historic act by the North African Muslim kingdom highlights the relationship then existing between America's Masonic leaders and the Moors, end quote. It is not a coincidence that around the same time Moors recognized the supremacy of the New World Order, the Bavarian Illuminati movement was gaining great popularity in the Masonic lodges of Europe and in the Americas. According to Robert Antoine Wilson's The Illuminatus trilogy, Adam Weishaupt and George Washington are the same person. Wilson's interpretation of the early development of the Illuminati is the main reason numerous conspiracy theorists maintain that the diabolical headquarters of the Illuminati is the New World Order, which in 2012 AD was placed in the hands of President Barack Obama, a real Moor and member of the black nobility that created the global criminal network, period. I'm going to take a sidebar real quick. As it's stated here, President Barack Obama is a real Moor, or former President Barack Obama is a real Moor and member of the black nobility. Now, if one goes to Dr. Alim El Bey's page, the chief of the United Washita Dr. Munya Nation, somewhere in all of that literature there, it will describe that Dr. Alim El Bey was actually, sorry, not Dr. Alim El Bey, but Barack Obama and his wife actually became Washita Moors in 2008. So that's 4 years prior to that situation there. So picking up where I left off, just wanted to make a sidebar that can be verified at Dr. Alim El Bey's website. Picking up on the excerpt. President Barack Obama brings things full circle because there is evidence in the Library of Congress strongly suggesting that illuminated Moors from Morocco, West Africa, and Europe were the visionary leaders of the Continental Congress. These illuminated Moors assisted in the writing of the U.S. Constitution, and they are responsible for the Masonic layout of Washington, D.C. The Moors, who engineered the New World Order, have to be the reason occult writers say that the Bavarian Illuminati movement acknowledges Muhammad as one of its founders. This Muhammad does not seem to be the prophet who wrote the Holy Quran. In addition to the Luciferian and satanic implications that surround the name, the Muhammad that The Muhammad that the black nobility, the Illuminati, and the European OTO claim as a member of their secret societies may be the king of Morocco, who in 1777 sanctioned the supremacy of the New World Order, the diabolical corporation commonly referred to as the United States of America. The flag of the King of Morocco is the same five-pointed star used in ceremonial magic and the Gnawa rites, that's Gnawa rites, brought into Morocco by West Africans claiming descent from Satan and the Jinn, that's Jinn. The role of King of Morocco The role King of Morocco played in the early development of the New World Order is why the five-pointed star is used by Masonic Illuminati to symbolize the nationality and special constitutional rights of people who come from the Ethiopian bloodlines of the medieval Christian devil envisioned as the dragon and the conquering Moor. So I'm going to reread that sentence again with a little more smoothness. The role King of Morocco played in the early development of the New World Order is why the five-pointed star is used by the Masonic Illuminati to symbolize the nationality and special constitutional rights of people who come from the Ethiopian bloodlines of the medieval Christian devil envisioned as the dragon and the conquering Moor. The notion that North African Muslims are the only Moors who played a part in the birth of the New World Order is very incorrect. Moors from Islamic West Africa also played a part in the Illuminati agenda that resulted in the creation of the New World Order. This can be said because the Moorish Empire that had its headquarters in Morocco included a large portion of Islamic West Africa. In Othello's Children in the New World, Dr. Jose V. Pimento Bay writes, quote, "These Moors clearly knew diplomatic law, as well as the political conditions in which they lived. They evidently understood that the newly established U.S. government held treaties and diplomatic relations with the Moorish Empire. The boundaries of the empire had extended far beyond that of the present-day North African state of Morocco. Moorish imperial political authority once went as far south as the Niger River, encompassing the Gao and the Jenne, that would be the Gao and the Jenne, and almost reaching the Volta River. Morocco's political and territorial authority had even included Timbuktu, following the famed city's conquest by Al-Mansur in 1591. End quote. Timbuktu is an important part of the hidden history of the Illuminati and the New World Order. Records in the library of Timbuktu speak of a Moor from Islamic West Africa colonizing America in 1310. Pulling up the next page, I only got so many pages on this computer. These Moors founded a magical civilization and system of government called Al-Marika, Al-Maurika, which was modeled after Al-Andalus under the rule of the West African Almoravid and the Almohad dynasties. The Arabic term means land of the Moors, and it is the origin of the term America. The Freemasons and Illuminati established diplomatic relations with Moors because West Africans established a Moorish empire in pre-Columbian America. This Moorish empire may be the reason the first design of the Great Seal of the America displayed the all-seeing eye of the Illuminati hovering over the step pyramid of the West African and Mesoamerican mysteries. A 19th century writer who was a member of the Masonic Lodge reveals that the all-seeing eye of the Illuminati is part of the West African mystery schools that in Europe evolved into the Knights Templar and the Freemasons. Give me one moment. So currently I'm only 3 pages in. I'm going to keep reading and making sure I can get at least to about 9 or 13 pages. So keep reading. In Signs and Symbols of Primordial Man, Albert Churchwell states, all the people of Bavili, Bini, and Yoruba possess the same. One of their sacred symbols is the triangle resting on the crown, and with the all-seeing eye in the center, and feathers on the outside of the triangle representing the rays of light, or delta. In the center of the triangle is a piece of looking glass, or something bright to represent light, quote, the light of the world. Churchward also shows in his book that the signs and symbols of the ancient African Freemasonry can be found amongst the Native American tribes that throughout the medieval era had extensive contact with Moors from West Africa and Europe. Apparently, the most esoteric side of the New World Order is of a pre-Columbian, Moorish-American origin. For those who are able to read between the lines, even the Gnostic Templar tradition speaks of this reality. According to some occult writers, the medieval Templars popularized in Europe the mysteries of Atlantis. Let me read that again. According to some occult writers, the medieval Templars popularized in Europe the mysteries of Atlantis, a Moorish civilization that existed in West Africa and the Americas. There is very convincing evidence showing that illuminated Moors were well established in America before the arrival of Columbus. In Othello's Children in the New World, Dr. Jose V. Pimento Bay writes, quote, the research of the New Zealander Barry Fell illustrates several examples of cultural similarities between the African and American continents. He refers to an unusual similarity between the homes of the Southwest people and of the Berbers of Morocco's Atlas Mountains. Fell also suggests a connection between the Hobby people of Mali, who he describes as, quote, black people, and some Southwest American Indians. The West African Hobby lived within the boundaries of the old Moorish Empire, end quote. Almost every category of academia proves that Al-Marika, the first New World Order, is just as much a reality as the West African occupation of Al-Andalus. In Early America Revisited, Dr. Ivan Van Sertima declares, I have presented evidence in a dozen categories to establish that there were Africans in America before Columbus. If European or Asiatic visitors were involved, one of two categories of evidence would have been considered enough. I have over the last 21 years presented a dozen European witnesses, including Columbus himself, in addition to metallurgical evidence, linguistic, botanical, cartographic, skeletal, epigraphic, navigational, iconographic evidence, African oral evidence, supported by identical Arab documentary evidence. The evidence does not relate to disconnected events or widely disconnected phases of time. It would be difficult to find any historical event that goes back in 1319 that presents us with evidence in all of these diverse categories, end quote. Uncovering the hidden history of the Western world is a very important discipline within Moorish science. However, there is another discipline within Moorish science that is of even greater importance. This discipline is purely diabolical, and it is only for people who belong to the global criminal network of the Illuminati and the Caribbean and Hispanic branches of the European OTO that manifest drug cartels with secret ties to the Satanic Knights of Malta, the P2 Lodge, and the CIA. To comprehend Moorish science of the Illuminati and the OTO, one must first realize that the five-pointed star is used as a symbol of nationality because this is the sigil that King Solomon used to summon Satan and the 72 Goetia demons in order to build the Masonic temple. An occult writer reminds us that the Solomonic tradition, which is the basis of the most advanced form of Moorish science, is Luciferian and Satanic. In Dragon Legacy, De Vere states, quote, the rose represents therefore the magical menstrual flow of Solomon's beloved, whilst the name Sharon or Sarah means princess. The rose of Sharon, or the rose of Sarah, is therefore the royal blood, the sang real, and the san graal, the holy grail, or the rosy crucis. Like doves, roses are sacred to Venus, who is Ishtar and Lucifer, the bright and morning star. is the bringer of light and enlightenment. Venus's emerald jewel, the hermetic table of destiny, is called the jewel in Satan's crown. To achieve illumination, making a blood pact with Satan and 72 Goetia demons is to manifest the brilliance of the Ras, the RAS, and comprehend the most advanced Moorish science teaching. The Ras is a divine king and magus from the bloodline of King Solomon. From one of the experts, we learn that Ras, RAS, is the origin of the necromantic Rose Cross Rite of the medieval Templars who paved the way for the diabolical rise of the Freemasons and the Illuminati. In Anacalypsis, Godfrey Higgins informs, quote, "The head or seat of wisdom was Ras. The head ruler was the same, so that the seat of the Ras was the sofa or the divan, Sophia, place of wisdom. The word is the divan in Eastern countries, used solely by the Ras or prince or divine incarnation of wisdom. The way in which we have found the word Ras and Sophia used as a title of honor for the kings of Persia and Abyssinia is very curious, and I think it will not be that surprising if the same system be found carried a little further. Adonis, as I have shown, was the meaning of wisdom, or has the meaning of wisdom. From this comes the titles of the Dons of Spain and Portugal, of the Welsh Adon for Lord, and of the Tider O'Connor Don of Ireland. The Rossi, R-O-S-S-I, or the Rosicrucians, with their emblematic red cross and red rose, probably come from the fable of Adonis, who was the sun, whom we have seen so often crucified, being changed into the red rose of Venus. Rus, R-U-S, in Irish signifies a tree, knowledge, and science. This is the Hebrew Ras. End quote. Ras, R-A-S, signifies alchemical redness of the rosy cross that materializes the Jewish and Islamic demons. These demons are the primeval ancestors of the Moors. The Ethiopian bloodline of the Ras or Rosicrucian is the reason the five-pointed star is used by Moors to denote a Luciferian and satanic nationality traceable to the astro-shamanic system of ceremonial magic invented by King Solomon. Significantly, the medieval Celtic tribes that claimed to descend from the Moors and King Solomon were identified as the Red People, and the swarthy members of these Celtic tribes were customarily referred to as, quote, devils. In Ancient and Modern Britons, David MacRitchie reveals, quote, whether regarded as gypsies or as members of the various Pictish, P-I-C-T-I-S-H, races, those Islemen whom we have just been looking at must have been Faws, or painted men. So great was the race mixture on that archipelago that there must have been every variety of painted and tattooed men among them, ruddled like the Galloway chief, woad-stoned like the archaic Green Man, tattooed like the famous Donald Breese, and other iron-grave Moors or painted of various colors like the Falls proper. Probably an investigation of ancient chronicles would result in the discovering numberless instances of this. The fact that one division of the dubbed Gauls became known as the Ruthardri, the Rothri, the Roderick, the Rari, or the Rory, whose names signified alternatively the chief of the Tawny or Red People and the Tawny or Red Chief, renders it likely that this tribe of swarthy devils, as the Gaelic poem politely calls them, used to smear themselves with iron ore, as in the historical cases already cited. End quote. Moorish science is always something very diabolical, and this is why it is symbolized by the five-pointed star, the favorite Kabbalistic sigil of Masonic Illuminati initiates who reign supreme within the global criminal network maintained by the European OTO temples, existing as aspects of the Satanic Knights of Malta and the infamous P2 Lodge. And the most esoteric form of Moorish science originates within the black nobility branch of the Illuminati. The Moorish science of the black nobility is about acquiring wealth by any means necessary and practicing a very sophisticated type of Solomonic black magic that alchemically turns the adepts of the Rosy Cross into cannibals, zombies, vampires, and werewolves. Moorish science is symbolized by the five-pointed star because real Moors are ceremonial magicians who make blood pacts with the devil so they can function within the global criminal network as Illuminati. The global criminal network founded is why the five-pointed star symbolizes nationality and the divine right to rule of those who descend from the Merovingians. The number 5 is a very important part of the Merovingian gnosis that directly relates to the real Illuminati conspiracy. In the magical worldview of the Merovingians, 5 is the number of the Quinotar, the mythological creatures with all the attributes. 5 is the number of the Quinotar, a mythological creature with all the attributes of Set Typhon, the prototype of the Judo-Christian devil. In Outer Gateways, Kenneth Grant explains, quote, Merovee, the first king of the Merovingian dynasty, was sired by an unidentified marine creature, known to the mythographers as the Quinotar. The number 5 is the number of the old ones, thus Merovee was infused with the current of a non-human life force. According to Maspero, Typhon was designated Lord of the Sea. It is a very strong point in favor of the extraterrestrial thesis that the monarch who initiated the Merovingian bloodline was said to have been sired by a creature of the deep. There is also good reason to believe that the number 5 was important to the first Merovingian princes because they were ceremonial magicians and Ethiopian Jews who directly descended from King Solomon. In the Columbus conspiracy, Michael Bradley informs, quote, around the year 500 AD, the Merovingian dynasty of France unaccountably adopted 2 symbols that could be related to the Holy Grail tale. First, they adopted the familiar fleur-de-lis, or lily of France. What most people do not know, however, is that this lily was a highly stylized depiction of the real flower, and the fleur-de-lis was identical with stylized lilies depicted on Hebrew coinage from the time of King David. Readers familiar with the Bible will know that Jewish love poetry from the times of King Solomon and David made frequent allusions to lilies. The flowers were so prominent in Hebrew literature of the time that coins depicted it. Merovingian legends insist that around the year 500 AD, if not a little before, their lineage was enhanced by a union with a sea creature which brought knowledge and wisdom. This sea creature was apparently represented by the toads and frogs on Merovingian flags. Now, it is merely a matter of linguistic fact that Mary means, quote, of the sea. Further, there are traditions that Mary Magdalene was a descendant of Solomon and a member of the lost Benjamite tribe of Israel. One thing is absolutely certain. Starting about 500 AD, the Merovingian dynasty of France claimed to be Jewish. These princes and princesses, in their turn, married into noble and royal family lines of that time. This fact was prompted on respected French historians to state that the foundation of France's nobility is actually Jewish, end quote. Something else to note is that Mero, M-E-R-O, is a Celtic term that denotes an ancient African Moor who was a noble and a Freemason. The crowned and conquering Mero, Moro, or Moor is why the 5-pointed star called Solomon's seal shows up in the magical traditions of Celtic tribes claiming descent from Ethiopians and King Solomon. In ancient and modern Britons, David McRitchie declares, quote, and whatever the fact may be worth, the emblem known as Solomon's seal has been found by Scottish antiquaries upon many a sculpted stone, end quote. McRitchie also suggests that Solomon's seal speaks of a Moorish presence in medieval Scotland and Ireland based on a powerful system of ceremonial magic popularized by Celtic druids with a dark skin complexion. Some good reading so far, right? I'm only halfway through of what I'm going to be reading. The records show that Moors were still leaders of many Celtic tribes throughout the so-called Age of Discovery. Many 17th century pirates who smuggled silver and gold were Scottish Freemasons from Celtic tribes founded and ruled by European black Moors who claimed descent from King Solomon. Apparently, the Celtic branch of the black nobility played a major role in the development of the global criminal network. That is the basis of capitalism, the New World Order, and the real Illuminati conspiracy. Thus, one cannot claim to be a Moor and use the five-pointed star as a symbol of black Celtic blood and nationality without at the same time claiming descent from the Merovingians, the Plantagenet dynasty, the black nobility, King Solomon, Satan, the Anunnaki, and the 72 Goetia demons. That the five-pointed star relates to the ceremonial magic of King Solomon has been noted time and time again by many experts. In Othello's Children in the New World, Dr. Jose V. Pimento Bay conveys, quote, the flag of the present-day Morocco also provides a strange and intriguing connection between King Solomon of the ancient Israelites and the Moorish/Moroccan people. The Moroccan flag is a green five-pointed star upon a red background. Ottfried Neubecker, author of A Guide to Heraldry and a member of the governing board of the International Academy of Heraldry, specifically identifies the green five-pointed star as King Solomon's seal. To add, in Islam and the West, Anwar Shinzi states, quote, Solomon, who rode on the clouds and ruled over spirit, birds, man, beast, and devils, had particular interest for the Moriscos, who had a great propensity for magic and superstitions, end quote. There is evidence indicating that Solomonic black magic was brought into medieval Spain and Portugal by Moorish demonologists. In the introduction of the Samuel Weiser edition of the Goetia Lesser Key of Solomon, the current head of the Caliphate OTO writes, quote, Solomonic magical works exist in Hebrew but are of uncertain date and provenance. Solomon and his seal are also mentioned in the Picatrix, the Gayat al-Hakim, an Arabic work on astrological and talismanic magic that was translated into Spanish and Latin in the early medieval Spain, where this magical tradition entered Europe, end quote. The great importance of the Goetia flag of the Moors, the Goetia flag of the Moors play in the European occult traditions that are the basis of the real Illuminati conspiracy has been noted by another insightful writer. For example, in the Encyclopedia of Women's Myths and Secrets, Barbara G. Walker states, quote, Solomon's legendary wisdom brought him almost as much reverence from medieval occultists as Thoth Hermes Trismegistus, a god of magic. Several grimoires purported to have been written by his hand. The Key of Solomon was one of the most popular. Magic signs like the pentacle and hexagram were often called Solomon's seals. Thus, wizards invoked Solomon's help in calling up demons for magical purposes. Significantly, the Picatrix and Goetia-derived grimoires in general show up in European magical culture when Spain and Portugal are under the rule of West Africans that claim descent from the extraterrestrial civilizations of Egypt and Sumer. That West Africans ruled medieval Spain has been observed by many experts. In Othello's Children of the New World, Dr. Jose V. Pimento Bay asserts, quote, historians such as Joseph O'Callaghan and Anwar Shinzi tell us that a few Arabs resided in the country. Africans or Moors and Berbers were politically dominant as well as ruling most of the state. Following the 11th century entry of the Almoravids and the coming of the Almohades in the 12th century, the Africanity of Iberia became even more pronounced. Interestingly enough, it was also under the control of these two dynasties that more African peoples from the western Sudanic kingdoms of Mali, Songhai, Ghana, and Senegal would enter, and Al-Andalus would experience its greatest intellectual flowering. End quote. Another scholar says that the last two dynasties to rule Spain had their headquarters in Islamic West Africa. This same scholar also informs us that the West African presence in Spain was still visible when El Mina Castle was built by the Portuguese and Spanish members of the black nobility who became Knights Templars. In African Glory, J.C. de Graaf Johnson informs, quote, the Almohad Empire was also an empire of the two shores, extending like that of the Almoravids from the Senegal River in West Africa to the Ebro in Spain. Muslim rule in Spain lasted from 711 to 1248 and lingered on until 1492 when Granada fell and when Columbus quote-unquote discovered America. It is interesting to observe that there were some Africans still ruling Spain when El Mina Castle in the Gold Coast was being built. When the West African Almohad dynasty was defeated by the Vatican, Moors with knowledge of brand ceremonial magic represented by Solomon's seal retreated to numerous places in Africa, where they gave birth to a Creole culture based on Andalusian traditions. These traditions survive in the Americas within the Hispano-Moorish religion called Palomayombe, that's Palo space Mayombe, which is a very important aspect of the global criminal network commonly referred to as the real Illuminati conspiracy. What was just said is only appreciated when one takes into account the fact that the Portuguese Knights Templar have left behind very detailed reports of Moorish communities that existed in all the African lands they discovered and conquered in the name of the black nobility and the Holy Grail. In Othello's Children in the New World, Dr. Jose V. Pimento Bay writes, quote, when speaking of the Moors of Zambiza, Angola, and Kilwa, Barbosa informs us there are some fair and some black. They are finely clad. The towns of Mombosa, Magaishu, Mafia, Malindi, Zanzibar, and Pemba are specifically described by Duarte as Moorish towns and occupied by Moors. Duarte said that sometimes the Moors were Arab-speaking and Muslims, but other times they were neither. The early Portuguese accounts and descriptions noted above also indicates the Portuguese awareness that Moors were found throughout the world and not just in Muslim Northwest Africa or Andalusia. Synchronistic occurrences climaxing in 2012, the year of the dragon, on the West African and Mayan Venus calendars, leads one to the very strong impression that the reason a magical revival is taking place at this time in Western history is based on the fact that President Barack Obama is the most distinguished member of the black nobility branch of the Illuminati. As the most distinguished member of the black nobility branch of the Illuminati, President Barack Obama is the leader of the global criminal network. The Barack Obama Illuminati connection states, quote, many of the Obama Illuminati connections have to do with powerful elitist organizations which so many of his cabinet belong to. The more you study the Illuminati Obama connection, the easier it is to see how he has a unique part to play in bringing about the New World Order, which has been in development for the past number of decades. There is another way of looking at the Obama Illuminati connection that pertains to the diabolical side of Moorish science that structures the global criminal network presided over by the black nobility. President Barack Obama was chosen by secret societies founded by the black nobility to materialize the Freemasonic-based Moorish science vision of the founding fathers of the diabolical corporation called the United States of America. Now that President Barack Obama has caused medieval Moorish history to repeat itself, the entire truth about the black nobility branch of the Illuminati must be brought to the light of a new aeon so that it can be covered in an even greater darkness. The type of Moorish science or ceremonial magic practiced within secret societies founded by the black nobility is based on the Luciferian doctrine of the Kemetic Rosicrucians. History indicates the Rosicrucian order is been based on Moorish science, that is, Kabbalistic mystery of the five-pointed star, the Goetia flag, and Andalusian Moors used to make blood pacts with the biblical demons who are none other than the Anunnaki of the ancient African Sumerian mystery schools. In the Othello, Children of the New World, Dr. Jose V. Pimento Bay informs, quote, the German thinker Christian Rosicrucius is credited with having revived or established the Rosicrucian order in Europe sometime before the 16th century. The order is esoterically affiliated with the Freemasonic tradition. According to Rosicrucian resources, Rosenkreutz is reported to have studied in Fez, Morocco, with Muslim Sufis. There it is said that he learned to govern unseen forces of nature and acquire access to the realm of the angels. According to Peter Tompkins, a historian of esotericism, Rosenkreutz wanted all of Europe to benefit from his acquired African knowledge, and Rosenkreutz specifically listed Thutmose III as his personal inspiration. An official publication of the Rosicrucian Society in the Americas, the AMORC, traces Rosicrucian origins back to Akhenaten. The publication states that the Rosicrucian order was essentially one of the mystery schools of the secret wisdom in ancient Egypt during the 18th dynasty of Akhenaten's reign. Amazingly, a primary motif of the Rosicrucians is the Seal of Solomon, which is also reflected in the Moroccan flag, end quote. Kemetic Rosicrucian adepts employ Solomon's seal because their necromantic rose cross rite materializes the 72 Goetia demons. This demonic rite is purely alchemical and is very similar to the one described in the sacred magic of Abramelin. The demonic rite, which activates the Holy Grail blood of Christ, Tippereth, takes place inside the Freemasonic vault of the Rosy Cross, the dark chamber of the alchemical redness or pure hellfire. Even within the Rosicrucian worldview of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, the Freemasonic vault of the Rosy Cross is based on Moorish science concepts that are very Luciferian and satanic or Clifothic. In Aleister Crowley and the Hidden God, Kidden Grant reveals, quote, the image of the beast, dragon, or seven-headed serpent formed the basal design of the floor of the vault of the adepts in the Golden Dawn. To each head was assigned a name of the Clifothic or demonic force, the number of which is 11. Aleister Crowley's Holy Book, which is full of Kabbalistic / Moorish science ciphers used in the ceremonial magic of the black nobility branch of the Illuminati, correlates the Clifoth to the alchemical redness and the Goetia flag of the Andalusian Moors who founded the Rosicrucian order. Liber Al states, quote, my number is 11. Quote, my number is 11, as all their numbers who are of us. The five-pointed star with the circle in the middle and a circle is red. My color is black to the blind, but the blue and gold are seen of the seeing. End quote. According to the secret teachings of Moorish science, inspired by Pascal Beverly Randolph's Hermetic Brotherhood of Light, the Freemasonic vault of the Rosy Cross is derived from the Kaaba shrine of the Islamic West Africa. Some Kaaba shrines even have the mystic red rose of the Rosicrucians on their ceilings. Kaaba shrines are based on ancient Bantu-Egyptian mysteries that Gerald Massey and Albert Churchwood tells us are the origin of the Masonic Lodge, that is the favorite playground of the Illuminati agents. Kaaba shrines account for the Egyptian symbolism found in the Rosicrucian doctrines dramatized in the rituals of Freemasonry. It was the West African Almoravids who brought the concept of the Kaaba shrine into Al-Andalus. The West African Almoravids were marabouts who revived ancient Egyptian Freemasonry. And the Solomonic bloodlines of these marabouts helped to develop the concept that black Europeans who descend from the master exorcist Jesus Christ, the reincarnated King Solomon, have great magical powers, or Baraka, that's Baraka. Scholars say that Jesus Christ is a very important part of Sufism, which in Islamic West Africa is customarily referred to as maraboutism. In Othello's Children of the New World, Dr. Jose V. Pimento Bay states, interestingly enough, Dahiru Yahya, a specialist in the history of the Moorish Empire, informs us that in the Sufi cosmology, Jesus plays a huge role in man's progress upon the earth. Sufis maintain that Jesus is supposed to return to earth in the last days in order to assist humanity. End quote. How one writer in particular describes the Kaaba shrines of Morocco and Islamic West Africa is very informative. In Soul of Africa, Magical Rites and Traditions, the editor states, quote, to achieve this illumination or gnosis, they would often withdraw to live as hermits or retreat to the isolation of a monastery, a community of the like-minded. Prominent marabouts are often revered as saints after their death and sometimes become guardians of villages and cities, even of entire regions. Their graves, with their characteristic chalk-like domes, become the focus of shrines. It is because that the marabout's power, or baraka, still works through their descendants, so that they are often asked for help or advice, end quote. The mystic dome of the Kaaba shrine replicates the dome of the Temple of Solomon, in which Knights Templar and Freemasons practice a type of ceremonial magic that involves making blood pacts with Satan and the 72 Goetia demons. That the Temple of Solomon is derived from Arabic and African sources has been noted by one of the experts. In the Sufis, Idris Shah states, quote, that the Templars were thinking in the terms of the Sufi and not the Solomonic temple in Jerusalem and its building is strongly suggested by one important fact. Temple churches which they erected, such as the one in London, were modeled upon the temple as founded by the Crusaders, not upon any earlier building. This temple was none other than the octagonal dome of the Rock, built in the 7th century on a Sufi mathematical design and restored in 913, end quote. According to the medieval legends, the Rosicrucian Temple of the Holy Grail contained octagonal symbolism. In legend of the Middle Ages, narrated with special reference to literature, Helen Adeline Goober relates, quote, the Temple of the Grail itself was 100 fathoms in diameter. Around it were 72 chapels of an octagonal shape. The vaulting was of blue sapphire. Upon the inside of the cupola surmounting the temple, the sun and the moon were represented in diamonds and topazes, and shed light as of day even in the darkness of night. The windows were crystal, beryl, and other transparent stones. The floor was translucent crystal, under which all the fishes of the sea were carved out of onyx, just like life. The towers were of precious stones inlaid with gold, their roofs of gold and blue enamel. Upon each tower there was a crystal cross, and upon it a golden eagle which expanded wings, which at a distance appeared to be flying. At the summit of the main tower was an immense carbuncle, which served like a star to guide the Templars thither at night. In the center of the building, under the dome, was a miniature representation of the whole, and in this the holy vessel was kept. A marabout is a hermit. One moment. My apologies, picking up where I left off. A marabout is a hermit. The degree of the hermit relates to mystical isolation, which raises the Rosicrucian to the level of Tipperith, the solar throne of the Holy Grail, the spiritual essence of the black nobility. Marabouts inspired the tarot card called the Hermit. In the classical tarot, the cloaked hermit holds the magical lantern, which relates to the Islamic and Jewish rites of the Holy Grail. The cloak that the hermit wears is the ritual attire of the marabout. And marabouts are the reason the hermit is a very important mystical aspect in medieval Grail legends featuring Christianized black men from royal bloodlines. These Christianized black men were the first great Rosicrucians. There is good reason to believe that the legendary Rosencrantz learned ceremonial magic from the Andalusian Moors who practiced a Christianized form of maraboutism or Sufism. Recall that Christian Rosencrantz allegedly studied ceremonial magic in Fez. The most popular legend regarding the origin of the Rosicrucian doctrine points us in the direction of the type of Moorish science that is behind the real Illuminati conspiracy. According to the 1734 edition of the Constitution of the Freemasons, Rosicrucian elements in Scottish Rite Freemasonry originate in Fez, and this Moroccan city is described in this official text as being aligned to the West African mystery schools that revived the rituals of the ancient Egyptians. In the 1400s and 1500s, Fez was a Moroccan city with a very large Hispano-Moorish community that placed great emphasis on Solomon's seal as a symbol of nationality. Since late medieval times, Fez has had Christianized Kaaba shrines with the same motifs found in Rosicrucian lore. A very close examination of the facts leads one to the very strong impression that the legends that speak of Christian Rosicrucians being preserved in his Freemasonic vault is nothing more than a Europeanized interpretation of the Christianized marabout, whose mummification corpse was worshipped as a saint radiating the Baka of Jesus' holy bloodline. In addition to the legendary Christian Rosencrantz, Kemetic Rosicrucian adepts with ties to various elitist organizations praise the ancestral spirit of Akhenaten. This aspect of Rosicrucianism is covered in great mystery. In other words, Akhenaten is a very important part of the real Illuminati conspiracy that climaxes within the Obama administration. According to Lawrence Gardner, author of Bloodline of the Holy Grail, Akhenaten was the first to bring the royal blood of the Dragon Kings into Europe. Gardner postulates that Akhenaten and the prophet Moses are one and the same. This is plausible since the Holy Quran describes Moses as a black African, and the story of Moses is derived from ancient black African myths about the birth messianic kings who come from ancient alien or extraterrestrial bloodlines. J.A. Rogers provides evidence strongly suggesting that Akhenaten was of pure Ethiopian Bantu stock. In World's Greatest Men of Color, J.A. Rogers declares, quote, "Judged by prevailing standards, Akhenaten was not handsome. His skull, which has been preserved, is what some scientists call that of a typical Negro. The jaw is exceedingly prognathous. His lips are so thick that they seem swollen. His father, Amenephis, was Negroid, and his mother, Tiyi, a full-blooded African. That his wife, Nefertiti, was a Negro cannot be denied," end quote. President Barack Obama, a man whose paternal side of the family comes from the same part of Africa as many African-Egyptian pharaohs, is believed in Kemetic Rosicrucian circles to be a clone or genetic replication of Akhenaten. So President Barack Obama, pursuant to this, is a genetic replication of Akhenaten. Picking up, this Rosicrucian / Moorish science teaching, which is an important part of the real Illuminati conspiracy, is why President Barack Obama has been chosen to put a magical seal on the New World Order. In 2012, the chapter in American history that features Moors and the Illuminati started to repeat itself. This is why President Barack Obama is sitting on the throne of the New World Order. President Barack Obama is not the first Moorish-American to hold this lofty position. The Continental Congress was run by Moors, and a few of the royal governors of the 13 colonies were Moors. There is even a concrete record of quote unquote African Americans with the surnames Moore, Moore, comma, More, and Morrison, who were members of the Illuminized Masonic lodges and wealthy slave owners. This is not to mention the fact that the founding fathers of America had a Moor named Benjamin Banneker, who is Chief Justice Big Ben Bay Emmanuel Muali, designed Washington, D.C. according to the secrets of Egyptian Freemasonry. If Benjamin Banneker had not been a Moor and a Mason of the highest degree, he would not have possessed the technical skills needed to design the headquarters of the New World Order. According to conspiracy theorists, Benjamin Banneker was often referred to as Prince Hall, the founder of the Prince Hall Freemasons. Perhaps illustrious Benjamin Banneker had referred to as the Prince Hall because he was a British Moor black nobility, a Knights Templar, and a Rosicrucian from one of the bloodlines of the Grail. Unpublished records in the Masonic Library say that the first Prince Hall Freemasons were Kabbalists and Rosicrucians who practiced ceremonial magic, that is, the only real Moorish science current. Many have forgotten that Prince Hall is a magical title within Illuminized Masonic lodges, and this title denotes Christ consciousness and black nobility. The concept of prince is derived from the medieval Rosicrucian mysticism and magic, the basis of the Grail lore. Prince Hall is the Adeptus Minor and the Master Mason, that is, the Black Prince of Temperith, the solar throne of the Holy Grail. Insightful occult writers are aware of the very special relationship that exists between the Master Mason and Temperith. In Hermetic Kabbalistic theurgy and its symbolic influence on the Western mind, Ansamni Rodriguez states the theurgist working through the self or the Ruach HaKodesh, represented by the Sephirah Tipperith in the Master Mason degree, may reach the full comprehension from the ray of light received from the supernal soul triad known as Yeshadiah, Shaya, and Nashama. End quote. Curiously, the first Prince Hall Freemasons were free black men. Only at a later date does this very mysterious branch of Freemasonry become part of the culture of black men whose heritage begins with slavery. Apparently, what Prince Hall Freemasonry was in the beginning is not what it is today. Of all the branches of the Freemasonry that could be mentioned, modern Prince Hall Freemasonry is probably the most mundane, with little to no connection to the Illuminati and the global criminal network. Its members have more of a mentality of a college fraternity than that of a secret society where ceremonial magic is actively being practiced. Back in the good old days, one of the prerequisites for being a free and accepted Mason was that the candidate had to be born free and very westernized. The majority of the black men in the 18th century America who were born free and held status within Western society were Moors, who were exempt from slavery because they either came from Holy Grail bloodlines or because they were legally recognized as honorary citizens of Morocco. Significantly, less than 100 years before Benjamin Banneker designed the headquarters of the New World Order, or New Egypt, and Prince Hall Freemasonry came into existence, there is still a concrete record of free blacks migrated to America from the British Isles. In Africa's Gift to America, J.A. Rogers writes, quote, strong documentary proof that the first Africans in America were not slaves and that chattel slavery of them did not start until 1659 or 1682 is given by competent researchers, four of whom are J.H. Russell, M.P. Andrews, Mary Standard, and Helen Catterall. Some of these Negroes were from England itself. There were tens of thousands of Negroes there then. One such was Benjamin Lewis, Catterall names others, end quote. The free black men who became the first Prince Hall Freemasons and played a part in the formation of the New World Order may have been Moors with a medieval Irish associated may have been Moors with a medieval Irish associated with the Rosicrucian order and the Holy Grail. This can be suggested because Prince Hall obtained his Masonic charter from the Irishmen. According to David McRitchie, in the 1700s, there were Moors living in Ireland who were customarily referred to as the Black Irish. In early American society, these, quote, Black Irish were called smoked Irish because their skin was just as black as the indigenous Black Africans. Moors are the reason the Irish Masonic lodges of Prince Hall's days preserved a very pure form of Kemetic Rosicrucian thought traceable to the medieval Templars. In Blackthorn Manifesto, Hakim Bey asserts, quote, when the temple was suppressed by Rome and its leaders burned at the stake, Ireland provided refuge for men incognito Templars. According to the temple and the lodge, these Templars later reorganized as a Rouge Irish branch of Freemasonry, which in the early 18th century would resist amalgamation with the London Grand Lodge. The Islamic connection is quite clear. Both in the Templar and in the Rosicrucian traditions, but the Irish may have inherited an even earlier link. Perhaps the medieval Irish Masonic lodges noted by Hakim Bey may have had some sort of connection to Black Freemasons in London. In Who Are These Prince Hall Freemasons, Alan E. Roberts states, quote, as far as I can determine, there have been Black Freemasons since 1365, when a code of Mason regulations was drawn up in Guildhall, London. We don't know when the term, quote, Freemason was first applied, but we know that it was applied to early operative Masons to differentiate them from other craftsmen. The free was added because these craftsmen were allowed to travel from place to place to seek employment in their important trade. There may have been black men among them. Shortly after the Grand Lodge system that we know today was established in 1717, Masonic lodges were formed throughout the world. Many of them were organized in countries with predominantly black populations, end quote. Significantly, Black Freemasons show up in London shortly after the Knights Templar moved their Rosicrucian order. This chapter in European esotericism is very significant because both documented history and Grail lore indicate that some Knights Templar were black men. A powerful branch of the Rosicrucian order is said to have flourished in medieval Scotland, and black men who were Knights Templar definitely had something to do with this. In secret societies and subversive movements, Nesta H. Webster writes, quote, according to a Masonic tradition, an alliance definitely took place between the Templars and the Masonic guilds at that period. During the proceedings taken against the Order of the Temple in France, it is said that Pierre d'Armont and 7 other knights escaped to Scotland in the Guild of Working Masons and landed in the island of Mull. Robert Bruce then took them under his protection, and 7 years later they fought under the standard at Bannockburn against Edward II, who had suppressed their order in England. After this battle, Robert Bruce is said to have instituted the Royal Order of HRM Haredom and the Knights of the RSYCS. End quote. Sir Douglas the Black was one of the Knights Templar who helped Robert Bruce form his Royal Rosicrucian Order. The records say that Sir Douglas was styled the Black because he was a black man with Holy Grail blood and a very diabolical disposition. In Ancient and Modern Britons, David McRitchie relates, quote, ... the good Sir James, the most loyal of all Bruce's knighthood, he came of the race that boasted its ancient aboriginal blood and that bore the surname which signified a black man. Wherever you encounter the Black Douglas in history or tradition, you will find that he is a black man. End quote. McRitchie is not the only European historian who says that the Holy Grail bloodline of the Templar and Rosicrucian Sir Douglas the Black is traceable to an ancient Scottish clan founded by black men. Renowned writer on heraldry say exactly the same thing. In Heraldry, J.A. Ringrosse reminds, quote, about the year 700 in the reign of Salvathius, the King of Scots, Donald Bane of the Western Isles, having invaded Scotland and routed the royal army, a man of rank and figure came seasonably with his figures to the king's assistance. He renewed the battle and obtained a complete victory over the invader. The king being anxious to see the man who had done him such a signal service, he was pointed out by his color or complexion in Gaelic language, Shoto de Glace, behind the black of swarthy colored men. End quote. Even at a much later date, there are reports of black communities in Scotland. These black communities probably account for Rosicrucian elements found in Scottish Rite Freemasonry. In Nature's Knows No Color line, J.A. Rogers relates, quote, MacRitchie adds that the legends and history of the Scottish Highlands are both witnesses to the existence of a purely black people there. Boswell and Dr. Johnson saw descendants of these black people when they visited Scotland. In his journey to the Hebrides, September 1st, 1773, Boswell wrote of one clan, the McCraes, quote, some were as black and as wild in their appearance as any American savages whatsoever, end quote. Martin, who had visited these western islands 8 years before Boswell, said of the people of Jura, quote, black of complexion, of Islay, generally black, and of Iran, generally brown, and some of black complexion. The use of brown for some shows very clearly that when he said black, he meant black. Also, Robert Knox in 1850 mentions a small colony of mulattoes living at Minchmore, Scotland, the offspring of Negroes and white women. The type of Moorish science that is the basis of the real Illuminati conspiracy is not for everybody. It is only for the reptilians, the children of the Nomos or Anunnaki, black and white people who are Rh negative, which in many instances is a recessive genetic trait manifesting itself in the form of superior intellect, originality, artistic creativity, acute psychic awareness, and a great propensity for the type of medieval black magic. Rh negative men and women are the offspring of the European Grail families that can legitimately claim direct descent from the royal house of David and the priestly clan of the master exorcist Jesus Christ. Contrary to popular belief, Rh negative blood is not Aryan or Nordic. Rh negative blood originates in the highlands of Bantu speaking Ethiopia. The Rh negative blood produced the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, and the Solomonic Temple of the Freemasons. Scholars maintain that the Rh negative blood originates amongst the Basques, Basque, of ancient Spain. The ancestors of the Basque migrated to Spain from northwest Africa, where one finds a high concentration of Rh negative blood. Basques are related to the Celts, the Romans classified as Ethiopians and Moors. Again, Basques are related to the Celts, the Romans classified as Ethiopians and Moors. Anthropologists classify the blue-eyed Berber and Moors of northwest Africa as Celts. The unsolved mystery of the Celts suggests that this classification is appropriate. In Sex and Race, Volume 1, J.A. Rogers informs, quote, Southern Spain and Portugal are in reality Negroid lands. The oldest race of the peninsula are the Basques, the mystery of Europe, who have a language of their own and claim to be pure. Some Basques have a certain type of Negroid face, and is not improbable that such are descendants of the Negro Aborigines just mentioned. End quote. This is not to mention the fact that Spain was part of the ancient Ethiopian Bantu Empire. In Ethiopia and the missing link in African history, Reverend Sterling Means asserts, quote, the original name of Spain was known as Iberian Ethiopia. It would be logical for a historian to believe that the Iberian Ethiopian was from an ancient African race that came across from Western Africa. The Roman history Tacitus describes these Iberians as black-skinned, curly-headed people. There is also a tribe in Ethiopia today known as the Galas, which bears almost the same name as the Gauls. According to David MacRitchie, the ancient Gauls were a black-skinned people identified as Ethiopian. Gaul may relate to Senegal, the homeland of the West African Almoravids. Scholars say that in the remote times, Senegal was populated by Ethiopians who practiced Judaism. The Senegalese and the Gauls could easily be related. According to the Moorish science mythos that are the basis of the real Illuminati conspiracy, the Anunnaki or 72 Goetia demons are the primeval ancestors of black and white people who are Rh negative. Ancient alien DNA is activated in the vessel of Kabbalistic black magic that in medieval Europe came to be known as the Holy Grail and the Jewel of Lucifer. To be Rh negative is to be a keeper of the Holy Grail once guarded by the Gnostic Christian warriors who secretly worship Satan as the black man of the witches' Sabbath. Satan in the form of the black man of the witches' Sabbath is the dark egregor Moorish science mythos that is the basis of the real Illuminati conspiracy. Satan is the reason the ancient alien DNA of the Moabite Moors is symbolized by the five-pointed star King Solomon used to summon the 72 Goetia demons and build the Masonic temple and house the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy Grail. That the black-faced Satan is the bloodthirsty and baneful god of the Moorish tribes of West Africa has been duly noted by scholars. In the Golden Age of the Moor, Donna Reynolds writes, quote, in the writings of Ibn Khaldun, the veiled Lantuna Berbers, who were and are Tuareg, are called Magians, worshipping fire. The Behad were in the same time of Makrisi, still adorning the pure fire which the Arabs called Shaitan or Satan. Shaitan is Arabic and related to the word Sati in Aramic and Ethiopian and meaning fire. Yakubi states that the Beja area of Baglin, Bakoras and Faras, was an area of many large towns, the inhabitants of which resemble Magians, believing in the dual principles of good and evil. There is evidence indicating the West African Berbers brought a very demonic interpretation of Moorish science into medieval Spain. I'm going to probably read like 2 more pages. Let me see. Yeah, I'll go ahead and read 2 more pages. We're 13 pages in. I'm going to read 2 more. In a mystery of secret societies, Arkan Daru'al relates, quote, during this very same period, a strange cult had risen in Morocco, crossed the straits into Andalusia, and was actively, if secretly, followed in centers of Arab civilization with cosmopolitan populations. The latter consisted of Arabized Jews, Christian scholars, and wandering ascetics who traveled from one country to another in search of knowledge. The devotees of this cult met on Thursday nights, were initiated by having a wound inflicted somewhere on their body which left a scar, and believed that they could raise magical power by dancing in or around a circle. Some of them claimed that they at times carried out religious services that involved the saying of the Muslim prayers backwards and invoking El Aswad, the black man, to help them, end quote. Satan is the oldest African deity. In Outer Gateways, Kenneth Grant declares, quote, Satan, the name derives from African roots, soot, meaning black, and on, a dog or jackal, and where type is derived from the farther north, a wolf. The dark god of Egypt, the twin of the bright Horus, was known as Set or Soot, the word blackness, whence our word Soot, Seton, or Set Anubis was the earliest form of Set Horus, the god of the double star, Sothis or Sirius, the dog star. End quote. What Grant conveys relates to the 72 Goetia demons that are none other than the Anunnaki. Note that the 72 Goetia demons are commonly referred to as howlers. This way of viewing the 72 Goetia demons is what links them to Set or Satan. According to Grant, quote, the borderland or desert is the place where the howling jackal, a totem of Set, Set's connection with the outside is indicated in the statue of him now in Copenhagen, which has been transmogrified into the image of Khnum, the divine potter or maker of man. End quote. According to ancient Islamic traditions, Set or Satan is the master blacksmith who invented the sacred iron pot or witch's cauldron. Significantly, this a similar type of teaching can be found in medieval Grail legends that feature Merlin the magician. In Encyclopedia of Women's Myths and Secrets, Barbara G. Walker says, quote, old Welsh traditions called Merlin a wild man of the woods with prophetic or shamanic skills. Christian writers, however, made Merlin a child of the powers of hell. According to Robert de Baron, Merlin was deliberately conceived to become the Antichrist. He was fathered on a virgin by a devil. Merlin was also an artisan and a smith. He forged the King Arthur's magical armor and a wonderful cup identified with the Holy Grail. End quote. Merlin is a title used by medieval ceremonial magicians who brought the spring rains with the Moors dance, which in its original form included shamanic drumming, spirit possession, healing, and prophecy. Numerous scholars concur that the Moors dance originates in Africa. In The Golden Age of the Moor, Edward Scobie writes, quote, in Britain, for instance, the Moors dance, England's national dance, which has been performed every May Day for centuries, was originally a dance performed by the Moors. It is of African origin and was introduced in England before William the Conqueror of 1096. End quote. Significantly, May Day ceremonies that featured a fertility dance very similar to the Moorish. Let me get this right. Significantly, May Day ceremonies that feature a fertility dance very similar to the Moorish can be found in Islamic West Africa and pre-Columbian Mexico. Scholars reveal that the conical hat worn by Merlin was worn by Moors. In They Came Before Columbus, Dr. Ivan Van Sertima conveys, quote, another notable correspondence between the cultures of Mexico and Mali may be found in the priestly cap of the Magi. This is the conical hat with a neck flap, which was the distinctive headgear of kings and priests in ancient Persia. It was passed on from Persia to the Arabs and perpetuated among the magicians of West Africa. Leo Weiner had traced the Arabic name for this starred hat through the Mande language, and the same name for that hat is found in Mexico. End quote. According to David McRitchie, Merlin was a ceremonial magician who learned occult mysteries from Druids, likened to Persians and Ethiopians. These Persians and Ethiopians were probably West African. These quote Persians and quote Ethiopians were probably West Africans who absorbed many of the shamanic traditions of the Middle East, the Moabite Moors. One must never lose sight of the fact that Merlin is a Moorish science concept created to the legend of King Arthur. Apparently, in the Grail legends, King Arthur and his 12 knights were Moors. In ancient and modern Britons, MacRitchie states, quote, the Welsh tales, it has been said, are full of black giants, against who the Arthurian warriors fought. An inference for this is that Arthur's followers were white, because the blackness of their foes would not have been particularized had they been of the same hue themselves. Now, the author of history is said to have been swarthy himself, Silurian blood, but the Arthur of romance has never been wholly identified with him, and indeed he is altogether difficult to localize in time and space, end quote. According to experts, the historical King Arthur is believed to have reigned in 6th century Ireland. According to Mac Ritchie, Dublin, the capital of Ireland, means land of the black people. In the late 1800s, the renowned British ethnologist John Beddoe, taught that the Irish descend from ancient African conquerors, and recent discoveries in genetics prove that these theories are very correct. These racially motivated theories are correct. Amazingly, in the 6th century Ireland, there are reports of a powerful Celtic kingdom populated by black people. In African presence in early Europe, Don Luke writes, from Geoffrey we learn of Gormund, an African king who ruled over Ireland during the Anglo-Saxon period in England. According to English history, Gormund was invited by England by the Saxons in order to help them oust an unpopular ruler and subdue a rebellious population. Could Gormund and the large population of Africans under his rule, as mentioned in the account, have been 6th century figures? This seems likely. Could he and the others have been indigenous, or might they have been recent arrivals from Africa? Future research may provide answers to these questions. On the other hand, there is no question as to the presence of African types as residents in British Isles throughout recorded history. End quote. Yeah, I gotta get to that page. End quote. There is more to Merlin than meets the eye at first glance. Merlin relates to the Merovingian princes. Apparently, Merovingian princes were ceremonial magicians very similar to the Moors, who in the month of May assumed the god form of Merlin so that the torrential rain fell and the crops grew. In Holy Blood, Holy Grail, Michael Bagarant states, quote, and whatever the historical actuality behind the legend, the Merovingian dynasty continued to be mantled in an aura of magic, sorcery, and the supernatural. According to tradition, Merovingian monarchs were occult adepts, initiates in arcane sciences, practitioners of esoteric arts, worthy rivals of Merlin, their fabulous near contemporary. They were often called sorcerer kings. By virtue of some property in their blood, they could allegedly heal by laying on of the hands. According to one account, the tassels at the fringes of their robes were deemed to possess miraculous curative powers. They were said to be capable of clairvoyant or telepathic communication with beasts and with the natural world around them, and to wear powerful magical necklaces, end quote. Michael Bradley provides convincing evidence in the Columbus conspiracy suggesting that the British Merlin cult was transferred to France when Arthur's kingdom started to crumble. The connection that the Merlin cult had to the Merovingian dynasty even has the full support of linguistics. Significantly, in ancient Celtic folklore, Mer, M-E-R, or Mero denotes a Moor, a master blacksmith, and a high-degree Freemason. In A Book of Beginnings, Gerald Massey informs, quote, the Moor was a style of high nobility amongst the Gael. He was a great officer of justice. The Mayor, M-E-R-E, is the mayor, M-A-Y-O-R, and there is an English mayor, M-E-R, who is a bailiff or superintendent, a prefect, an overseer, or a governor. The mayor, M-E-R, was not only an overseer or superintendent, but he was also an architect. And we are told by the Bardas that Morian lifted the stone of the Kettai, K-E-T-T-A-I. Morian is said to have been the architect of Stonehenge. Now, as a Negro is still known as Moorian in English, may not this indicate that Moorian belonged to the black race, the Cushite builders? End quote. African origin, the African origin of the Moorian, Morien, that was the first great Moor or Merlin is very evident. The 14th century the 14th century Dutch poem entitled Moorian says the following about the knight that is credited to building Stonehenge. Quote, he was all black, even as I tell ye, his head, his body, and his hands were all black, saving only his teeth. His shield and his armor were even those of a Moor, the black as a raven, end quote. Even the medieval writers who are responsible for many Grail legends say that Stonehenge was built by the ancient black Africans who were the first great Freemasons of the Western world. In African presence in early Europe, Don Luke conveys, quote, Geoffrey of Monmouth, the medieval historian and father of Arthurian romance, informs us that an old English tradition says that the huge slabs of stone which were used in the construction of Stonehenge were brought from Africa by giants. Geraldi Carbrensis, another medieval writer, tells us the same, end quote. In medieval European folklore, this is going to most likely be the last page I read. Let me see. Because this is where it starts getting deep. Yeah, I'll read to there. All right. In medieval European folklore, West African Saracens, or Moors, are depicted as black giants from the medieval Ethiopian Bantu bloodlines of Lucifer, Satan, and Beelzebubs. The Sultan of Babylon, a medieval magical text that can be linked to the Holy Grail, says the following about the black giants who dominated the medieval world. Quote, this Ostrogoth of Ethiopia, he was a king of great strength. There was none such in Europe. So strong and so long in length, he was a devil's son of Beelzebub's line. End quote. The black giants who built Stonehenge were none other than the Nephilim, and this is why Stonehenge replicated the megalith stone structures of the ancient Hebrew Israelites who were of pure Ethiopian Bantu stock. In Signs and Symbols of Primordial Man, Albert Churchwell states, Stonehenge may be said to be analogous to one of the temples. The stones were arranged in the same manner as were those of the Israelites, and its magnitude and rude grandeur proclaim that the people who raised this ponderous blocks of stone here, as well as in other parts of Britain, were both learned and powerful. End quote. Nephilim and Canaanites are one and the same. The renowned Senegalese historian Sheikh Anta Diop informs us in The African Origin of Civilization that the Canaanites were the descendants of Ham. It has also been suggested by one of the experts that Canaanite descendants in ancient West Africa colonized the British Isles, and this chapter in Black history probably has something to do with the building of Stonehenge. In Sex and Race Volume 1, J.A. Rogers quotes, now, according to the same source, the eldest son of Canaan was Sidon, S-I-D-O-N, the ancestors of the Phoenicians and the founder of the great cities of Sidon and Tyre. The Phoenicians were the great explorers and merchants of antiquity. They circumnavigated Africa, colonized Britain, and worked the tin mines there, and founded Carthage and a colony or two in West Africa. Equally forthcoming is the fact that the Nephilim can be traced to the Merovingian mythos. In Kenneth Grant and the Merovingian mythos, Vaj Moore states, quote, Set was the black god. He was known as he who is below. He was banished to the underworld by his twin Horus for killing Osiris. The Nephilim were banished to the center of the earth for disobeying God by mating with the daughters of men and teaching them the forbidden arts. Nephilim have been identified with the father of the Merovingians. Set was generally considered to be a vile, vicious, baneful God to men, he may have been considered baneful to some, but not to the race of the Grail. End quote. Whichever way one chooses to look at the matter, Satan is the basis of real Moorish science, because Satan is the first deity of what Gerald Massey called Inner Africa. In Gerald Massey's lectures, Massey writes, quote, the Hebrew devil or Satan, which means the opponent or adversary, and the first great natural adversary recognized by primitive man was darkness, simply darkness, the constant and eternal enemy of light. That is, the powers of darkness was literally before it became metaphorical, moral, or spiritual. The dark power is primary in all the oldest traditions and cults of the human race. Hence, sacrifices were first offered to the powers of darkness. All was dark at first within the mind, and the all was darkness that created dread without. The primitive man visibly emerges from the shadow of darkness as deeply impressed and indelibly dyed in mind, as was his body with its natural darkness. The black man without was negroid within, as his reflection remains in the mirror of mythology. End quote. Ancient African Satanism was transmitted to Europe, where it gave rise to the Gnostic doctrines that correlate a black-faced Jesus to the serpent that tempted Eve. The Afro-Satanic or Typhonian current found in Gnostic doctrines that are the basis of the Grail lore and the magical worldview of the Knights Templar is a fact that has been commented on by the historians. In the discovery of the Nag Hammadi text, Jean Duress writes, quote, in the Gnostic myths, which transform the God of Genesis into an evil God, and similarly turns various other values of biblical doctrine upside down, this Seth, the enemy of the chief Egyptian gods, acquires a definite position. One may even wonder whether, perchance, if some of these myths did not bring him into such contact with his homonym, which is Seth, the son of Adam, as to create some confusion between them. That is not impossible. We shall find later some curious traces of a cult of this Set Typhon presiding over Judeo-Gnostic rituals in which Adam plays the leading part. That this cult came to be actually codified is attested by the existence of Egyptian figurines of the god Seth cast in bronze, which are perfectly appropriate to it. End quote. In the Grail lore of the Knights Templars, who worship the devil as the black man of the witches' Sabbath / Luciferian Gnostic Catholic Mass, in parentheses Baphomet, and systematically paved the way for the rise of Freemasons and Illuminati, Jesus and Satan are believed to possess the same magical blood because of what the Gnostic Christians taught about Seth. In the remarkable book entitled Gnosis of the Gnostic Christ, Tal Malachi explains, quote, while Lord Yahshua rarely speaks of himself as, quote, the Son of God, he often refers to himself as the son of the human one, Adam. In so doing, he calls himself the great Seth. For according to the scriptures, after Cain slew Abel, he was exiled. God blessed Adam and Eve with another son called Seth, who is said to be in the image and after the likeness of Adam. The name Seth is significant because it is composed of the last two letters of the Hebrew Aleph Beth, which is Shin and Tau, or Shin and Tau. Shin, as we known from our previous discussion, is the letter representing the Holy Spirit, and it represents the fiery intelligence. Tau is the cross and represents completion. Seth literally means the light of the cross. End quote. One thing that this very unique Liber is meant to bring to the forefront is that the Gnostic Christian serpent who turns men and women from Holy Grail bloodlines into Illuminati agents of the highest degree is preserved nowhere else in the Western world but in the Red Voodoo sects, SECTS, of Haiti, which in Eastern Cuba evolved into the Masonic Illuminati branch of Palo Mayombe called Kimbiza Kombizanga and Santo Cristo Bien Viage. What I am revealing as an Illuminati agent is the reason the Kimbiza pots of Palo Haitiano contain a cross symbolizing the blood of Jesus and are classified as Jewish in honor of their connection to Satan. That the Gnostic Christian serpent, which turns Rh negative people into Illuminati, survives in the red voodoo sects has been noted by a very popular writer on the Haitian Masonic mysteries. In Secrets of Voodoo, Milo Rigaud reveals, quote, voodoo initiates call those who have abandoned the tradition Cabrit Thomazis, also known as Congos or Ebros in Shaninde. They are member of the so-called red or criminal sects who shed human blood for sacrificial offerings. The expression Cabrit Tomazo refers to the impure voodooist because of the serpent of the Afro-Judaic temple that is known as Ast, or Asthom. Asthom is believed by traditionists to be the variation of Tomaz or Thomas, a later African expression signifying the musical atmosphere of the Omphar. End quote. The cosmic black blood of Jesus and Satan is the birthright of the Illuminati agents who reign supreme within the global criminal network. This black cosmic blood, which is mystically sealed inside the Holy Grail of the Knights Templar, is not human. It is reptilian. It is the demonic essence of the ancient aliens, extraterrestrials, or Anunnaki, the ceremonial magicians who are behind the real Illuminati conspiracy called the 72 Goetia demons, which are defined by the five-pointed star of ancient Moorish nationality. The blood of the Grail gives the Illuminati agents who descend from medieval Moors the ability to access the alternate reality described by visionary quantum physicists. For people who are outwardly appearing human but do not belong to any of the branches of the human race, breed to be slaves and food for the Illuminati, the proper application of the dark side of the law of attraction consists in turning the triangle used to summon the 72 Goetia demons into a rotating black hole of quantum mechanics. When the rotating black hole is generated with the infernal triangle of classical ceremonial magic, necromancy, or Moorish science, Masonic Illuminati signs and symbols skillfully imposed on all mundane realities assists the alchemical transformation of the material plane into a wave function, the superposition of timeless or limitless possibilities, poetically expressed in all the dark myth circles of the world that feature multi-dimensional super beings. This is how the black magicians who know the hermetic secret of the magical link or the dark side of the law of attraction reign supreme in this world and the next as mighty archons commonly referred to as Illuminati agents. The ceremonial magic developed within the Bantu mystery schools is the key to time travel and shape-shifting. This ancient alien or extraterrestrial technology survives in the red voodoo sects and Palo Mayombe in the form of the flying Nganga of the cannibals, zombies, vampires, and werewolves who are the black nobility leaders of the global criminal network and the secret police of the New World Order. I'm going to read that again because that's serious. This ancient alien or extraterrestrial technology survives in the red voodoo sects and Palo Mayombe in the form of the flying Nganga of the cannibals, zombies, vampires, and werewolves, who are the black nobility leaders of the global criminal network and the secret police of the New World Order. The mystery All right, I'm 18 pages in. I'm going to read a few more, maybe up to about 22, just so this information can close out properly. The mystery of the Nganga, which is really the mystery of the Holy Grail, is only known by the Mayamberos, who are an integral part of the real Illuminati conspiracy. These Mayamberos realize that Nganga is derived from the Egyptian word Ankh, Both Bantu words symbolize the Kabbalistic mysteries of the rotating black hole and the shamanistic crossing from one dimension to another. In Congo cosmology, this shamanic crossing is symbolized by the Kalunga line. Contained within the concept of the Kalunga line is the concept of the Nganga and Ankh. To safely cross the Kalunga line, the Bantu shaman must first take initiation. According to a renowned Bantu elder, Nganga means to be initiated. In Self-Healing Power and Therapy, Bunseki Fukao teaches, quote, Ganda, to be initiated, is to join the circle of Nganga masters and become oneself Nganga, a doer. Another writer shows that Ankh has the same meaning as Nganga. In the book of the beginnings, Gerald Massey states, quote, the Ankh as an Egyptian symbol of oath and covenant is represented by our hank, noose, or a knot, end quote. Significantly, a knot is K-N-O-T, is a very important aspect in the Bantu traditions that deals with the Nganga and the Nkisi. Bunseki Fukao describes, quote, the word kanga is a verb which means to tie up, usually with a string. Kanga, K-A-N-G-A, is coding, hiding, neutralizing, preventing, protecting, and immunizing as well. When the futu, the container, is filled with the nkisi, its concept or its content, its maker ties it up to hide the secret power of his making. End quote. The concept of magically tying a knot with a string relates to quantum physics and the mystery of the rotating black hole that produces the Illuminati agent, who can time travel and shapeshift. In Maya Cosmology 2012, John Mayer Jenkins explains, quote, in Mesoamerican ideas about world creation, cosmogenesis takes place via a kind of weaving process. Reality is thus undergirded by a system of thread-like links. In other words, space-time itself is woven together in ways that human beings stuck within the three-dimensional space-time fabric of observable reality cannot readily perceive. This philosophical model developed by Mesoamerican thinkers is actually extremely progressive. For modern physicists, also described a network of thread-like links between distant places, wormholes in space-time that tunnel through a higher dimension. All right, picking up where I left off. It says, types of incontestable evidence gathered by Dr. Ivan Van Sertima and Dr. Leo Weiner indicate that what Mesoamerican shamans knew about the rotating black hole was obtained from the West African Moors, whose mystery tradition is almost identical to that of the Bantu scientists of the Nile Valley and Congo basins. Also, Nganga and Ankh signify the magical circle and the number 0. According to Kenneth Grant, 0 represents the eye of Set, the eye in the triangle, the all-seeing eye of the Illuminati, which leads to the realm of the Cliff-Off, the alternate reality Mayim Barrows call Inferno Mundo. Also, the letter O in Hebrew is Ayin, which means the eye. As a leader of the European OTO, Aleister Crowley taught that Ayin is the eye of Satan envisioned as Baphomet. The Knights Templar worshipped Baphomet as a mummified black head of a Moor, who in life was illuminated. Again, the Knights Templar worshipped Baphomet as the mummified black head of a Moor, who in life was illuminated. This black head is why Moors appear on the magical shields of royal families with connections to the Knights Templar and the Priory of Sion. This black head is also why Freemasons venerate the devil in their higher degrees. Whichever way one chooses to view the matter, Ayin is the eye of the Moor who becomes an Illuminati agent of the highest degree after making a blood pact with the devil and the 72 Goetia demons. In Palo Haitiano, the devil is none other than the one-eyed Lukankazi that gives the unbaptized or Jewish Mayim Barrow, the Illuminati agent of the highest degree, the magical power to take the quantum leap and function within the rotating black hole of or Kabbalistic abyss as a vampire, zombie, cannibal, or a werewolf. The Mayambero, who has made a blood pact with the devil with all the attributes of the medieval Moor, places his unbaptized or Jewish Nganga in the goetic triangle, created with three large mbeles or machetes, the decayed head of a murder or suicide victim, and the decayed heads of a black dog and a black cat. After the Mayambero creates the goetic triangle, which also happens to be the stargate or all-seeing eye of the Illuminati, he is able to take the quantum leap into the rotating black hole. The quantum leap that can only be taken by Illuminati agents who have been initiated at the highest level into the red voodoo sects and Palomayombe has been described a very insightful writer on the dark side of the Afro-Caribbean shamanism. In Voodoo Quantum Leap, Dr. Reginald Crosley declares, quote, having made the quantum leap through the ambiguity barrier, the Xanderist or Luciferian is in his composite state with the Voodoo or Goetia demon is a new entity in itself, a wave function presented as a coherent superposition of all possibilities. What are those possibilities? The power of ubiquity or being everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Time travel in the past and in the future, teletransportation, levitation, the power of telepathy and telekinesis, the power of visibility and invisibility, the power of materialization and dematerialization, the power of metamorphosis or avatars, the power of healing, the power of invulnerability, the power of death and resuscitation, the power of possession or channeling over other individual animals or objects. The collapse or materialization of the wave function into a chosen actualization makes visual all other possibilities. Although in ordinary circumstances all other virtualities should have vanished, but being in a black hole dimension, a world of singularities, the new entity keeps the virtual states of coherent superposition and can move from one actualization to the next ad infinitum. However, when it exists out of the rotating wormhole into ordinary reality, the Xandoric wave function collapses into the ordinary material world and all other virtualities vanish. End quote. What Crosby so eloquently describes is the black magic David Icke says in the conspiratorial writings is in the hands of the Masonic Illuminati initiates who descend from the ancient aliens or reptilians. Like in the Luciferian and satanic rituals of Obeah, Voodoo, and Palomayombe, Icke's most compelling theory is essentially that by living as cannibals, Masonic Illuminati initiates gain access to dimensions outside of the circles of time. In Children of the Matrix, Icke explains, quote, the rituals conducted by the Illuminati-controlled secret societies like the Freemasons, the Knights of Malta Knights Templar, etc., are one way this is done. These rituals, especially the more advanced ones, are designed to create a vibrational environment in which the fourth dimensional reptilians or Goetia demons can possess the body. As the initiate progresses through the levels, he undergoes even more powerful rituals directed by the black arts, which step by step give the fourth dimensional entity more power over the person's thought and emotional processes until the reptilian is in complete control. End quote. Icke is correct when he links the Christian devil to the ancient aliens or reptilians who are the ancestors of the Illuminati agents who take the quantum leap into the abyss and mystically fly around the world at night in flying Ngangas or orgone-generated UFOs. According to Icke, quote, the depiction of the devil is very like the descriptions of the reptilian royalty known as the Draco. And in the biblical text, the devil/Satan is clearly said to have been reptilian. Icke is also very correct when he says that reptilians have extraterrestrial bloodlines Illuminati agents connect to bloodline of Jesus and all other great prophets of the book. Significantly, similar concepts can be found in West Africa. The legend of Olokun, the legend of Olokun is a very good example. In ancient West African cosmology, Olokun is a reptilian who fell from the starry abyss when the earth was nothing but a swampy planet identical to the planet that exists in the Sirius star system. The myths of the Edo say that Olokun and left on earth a royal bloodline. For the Edo, Olokun has many of the attributes of Obatala, the Yoruba divinity that descends from heaven and creates man out of clay, and who in Brazil and Cuba is correlated to Jesus Christ. Myths about Obatala and Olokun obviously evolved from ancient African Judaism, the source of Grail lore, the Knights Templar, Freemasons, and the Illuminati. During Ifa divination, Olokun speaks through a sign called an Otura. In addition to being the sign of Olokun, Otura is the sign of Jesus Christ and the people who were born to rule the earth as Illuminati because they come from the extraterrestrial bloodlines of the prophets and messiahs. In Otura and many other Ifa signs, Olokun has a very close relationship with Shango or to Shango. Shango has all the attributes of the Dragon Kings that appear in the medieval European chronicles as black warriors. Sheikh Anta Diop says that Shango was an ancient Ethiopian king. This explains why Shango's primary symbol is the six-pointed star, used to represent the royal house of David. In several Ifa signs, Shango is even depicted as a medieval king and a Moor whose mission was to revolutionize the world with the fiery essence of a messianic Islam. Like Olokun, the priestly clan of Shango can be linked to the Holy Grail bloodlines, which the medieval writers say originate in Africa. Thus, it is not far-fetched in any way to suggest that Shango priests contributed to the development of Grail lore, and West African myths about Olokun are reminiscent of the Merovingian mythos conspiracy theorist tells us has something to do with the Illuminati and the New World Order. Perhaps this impression is the reason Merovingian princes are not only believed by experts to have been Ethiopian Jews, but are said to have been the magical offspring of the Nomo-like creature. Nomo, N-O-M-M-O. Like in the West African mysteries, the blood of this Nomo-like creature, which the Merovingians called a Quinatar, has something to do with the bloodline of Jesus Christ. The Gnostics even depicted the black-skinned Jesus as a Nomos. To the Gnostics, Jesus was viewed as a fish man and a savior of the world, and this is precisely how the Nomos are viewed in West African mysteries, which in medieval Europe evolved into the Grail lore. Furthermore, the Gnostic Jesus, whose ancient alien DNA is mystically sealed inside the Holy Grail, has something to do with the Sirius star system, the homeland of the Nomos. Something else to observe is that the Edo tribe for centuries has claimed divine descent from Olokun, had at a very early date extensive and sustained contact with black Portuguese Knights Templars who were in possession of the Holy Grail or the Jewel of Lucifer. For those who know how to read between the lines, this chapter in sacred black history has been commented on by one of the experts. In Olokun, owner of the rivers and the seas, John Mason informs, quote, Edo tradition maintains that in the earliest times they were governed by rulers who carried the title Ogiso, which means Sky King. During the period when these kings ruled, the Edo kingdom was known as Igodo Migodo. Owodo was the last of the Ogiso. His rule was characterized by Egarevba as, quote, a long course of misrule, failure, and anxiety, end quote. Owodo was tricked and misled by his evil senior wife into banishing his only son and heir to the throne. Prince Akaladeran, who was innocent, Prince Akaladeran, with his wife, mother, and close relatives, wandered into the forest for some time before he found the river port town of Ugatan, or Guato, just within the barrier of coastal mangrove swamp. Ugatan's prosperity, especially in the 1500s, was due to a large part of the European merchants, the Knights Templar, who stopped there to obtain chili peppers, ivory tusks, and eventually slaves in exchange for imported cloth, coral beads, cowries, brass rods, and eventually guns. The town became a very prosperous, and Ekaladuran attributed this prosperity to Olokun heeding his pleas for salvation and prosperity. Ekaladuran ordered that a temple be built to Olokun would be worshipped by everyone in the town. End quote. Perhaps Black Templars, that is the Dons or dragons from the port of the Grail or Portugal, helped to revive an ancient Olokun cult, which is in reality a continuation of the Anunnaki tradition. This impression is supported by the fact that there is an Olokun-like deity in the Gnostic Christian cosmology of the seafaring Black Templars. To the seafaring Black Templars, Olokun was John the Baptist. A connection can be made between John the Baptist and Olokun because the Black Templars correlated John the Baptist with Oannes, O-A-N-N-E-S, a Babylonian deity with all the attributes of the Nomos and the Anunnaki. The great importance Black Templars from the port of Grail placed on Oannes, envisioned as John the Baptist, is reflected on royal shields containing aquatic green dragons, reminiscent of the medieval frogs on the flags of the Merovingian kings. In Revelation of the Holy Grail, Chevalier Emeris states, quote, Some have suggested that this God-man was later symbolized by John the Baptist. In Christian tradition, there are several key points to support this hypothesis, namely that Oannes came to land and baptized people with water and anointed them as priest kings. One of the most important dates in the Templar tradition was St. John's Day, June 24th, near the summer solstice. The feast day predates John the Baptist, as it was the feast of Oannes. The Christian church adopted John the Baptist, or Oannes as he was called, as a patron saint to fill the date of celebration of Oannes, the ancient Babylonian god king. Significantly, St. John's Day is observed in Haiti by Masonic lodges that have either a direct or indirect connection to the Grail lore, the Knights Templar, and the Priory of Sion. Most occult scholars connect Haiti's St. John's Day celebration to the Martinists. However, the Martinists of the 18th century Haiti may have merely continued a slightly reformed Gnostic Christian tradition brought to Haiti by the Knights Templars. The Masonic Palo Mayombe tradition still reflects this chapter in early Caribbean history. In the Masonic branch of Palo Mayombe, called Kimbiza and Santo Cristo Buen Viage, John the Baptist and Olokun are correlated to a mysterious prenda called Guanendoki. According to the Black Cuban elders of Santo Cristo Bien Viage, Guanendoki is a palo pot that materializes the spirit of mariners. In life, these mariners were Moors and Knights Templars. Also, Guanendoki is a term suggesting mariners venerated in Palo Mayombe are the elevated spirits of Knights Templar who colonized the Caribbean before the arrival of Columbus. Guanendoki breaks down into Guanin and Endoki. Endoki means a man or woman who has made a blood pact with the devil and lives as a cannibal, vampire, zombie, or werewolf. And the first part of this undefined Palo Congo term denotes the pre-Columbian Moors who hailed from the part of Islamic West Africa in the early 14th century under the rule of the Rosicrucians and the Knights Templar from the port of the Grail, or Portugal. In African Presence in Early Europe, Harold G. Lawrence writes, quote, The black man who brought these great golden spear points to Hispaniola were the Mandinka. Father Roman Payne, one of the first 12 missionaries to visit Americas after Columbus's discovery, states that the African gold merchants who came to Hispaniola were called the Black Guanini. Rafinesque asserts that Guanini implies the Golden Tribe, or in other words, black merchants who trafficked in gold. The significance in West Africa, as we have seen, is the same. The golden spears Moorish West Africans brought to pre-Columbian Americas are almost identical to the sacred lances of the Knights Templar who colonized West Africa in the early 1400s. This sacred lance is commonly referred to as the Spear of Destiny. The sacred lance displayed in the imperial treasury of Hofburg Palace in Vienna, Austria, has gold around the lower parts of the tip of the point. End quote. One can attribute the sacred lance, a very important part of the medieval Grail lore, to the Moors, because the Moors who conquered Spain and southern France are the West African Saracens who initiated the Knights Templar into the Solomonic mysteries. According to Kenneth Grant, Aleister Crowley's most gifted apprentice, the European OTO revives the African Sumerian tradition. This tradition can be linked to the Moors who claim descent from Al-Shaitan, or Satan. Grant maintains that Aiwass, the messenger of the new Eon of Set Horus, is the aspect of Al-Shaitan. Grant insights take on even greater significance when one is aware that Aiwass is a jinn that is worshipped in Islamicized spirits, almost identical to what in the West Indies is called Obeah and Palomayombe. And recall that medieval Templars venerated John the Baptist as Oannes. Oannes is what ancient West Africans called Nomo, and the Sumerians called Enki. Biblical scholars say that Enki and Satan are one and the same. Oannes, Enki, and Nomos also bring to mind Eliphas Levi's The Reptilian depiction of Baphomet. Levi's Baphomet also contains the five-pointed star, and this is because Baphomet is the ancient ancestors of the Moabite Moors. Baphomet's reptilian characteristics, which bring to mind Oannes, is why he is honored by Illuminati agents who are high-degree Freemasons and Rosicrucians. Albert Pike says that Freemasons revere Baphomet, and the importance John the Baptist or Oannes plays in the magical worldview the Freemasons inherited from the Knights Templar and Martinus has already been noted. Also, Oannes is Anu, a Bantu god featured in Sumerian legends of Anunnaki ancient times or extraterrestrials. Amazingly, in Central Africa, the magical birthplace of Palomayombe, there is a Bantu tribe called the Anu that claims descent from the stars. The Sumerian and Egyptian term Anu relates to Antu, and this is the origin of Bantu, the Rh negative ancient black Africans who are the offsprings of extraterrestrials. In very remote times, the Anu tribe migrated to the Congo Basin from East Africa, where we encounter Bantu tribes with stellar rites based on memory of the time when ancient Ethiopian Bantu Empire encompassed all of Sumeria and Egypt. In the Song of the Stars, Credo Mutwa states, quote, "In Africa we have a tribe that has been in existence since the days of the ancient Sumeria. They are the very remarkable people of Kenya called the Maasai. Now, the Maasai told me a very strange story when I was living amongst them in Kenya many years ago. They told me they worship God under a name Inki Nke Urungu. Now I understand that Inki, a god of the sky, was also worshipped in Sumeria long before even Babylon was built. The Maasai were also given the task of looking after cattle many centuries ago by a wise man from the stars called Uru Wantayi. I must tell you that the word Wantai is ancient Egyptian and is the name of the city of the Chaldeans or Sumerians. Another occult writer reminds us, end quote. Another occult writer reminds us that Enki is Samael and Satan, the heart and soul of Moorish science and the real Illuminati conspiracy. In the Dragon Legacy, Prince Nicholas de Vere states, quote, "There are two gods. There the two gods were named Enki, Samael, and Enlil or Jehovah. The war between them arose first as a dispute over seniority. They were sons of one father, Anu. Enki was the younger son of Anu's senior wife, Antu. This is Bantu. In Anunnaki culture, the female was the source of sovereignty, and by right, Enki or Samael was therefore the rightful heir to his father, Anu, the king of Anunnaki." End quote. The way Anu and Oannes have been described by some of the experts is very insightful. In Wonderful Ethiopians of the Ancient Kushite Empire, Drusilla Dungy Houston writes, quote, Bel or Nimrod, god of the Chaldeans and later Babylonians, saw the fruitfulness of the land. He sent to them from the sea a fearful fish. The fish brought men language, science, the harvesting of seeds and fruits, and rules for the boundaries of land. They gave them the mode of building temples and cities, art, writing, and all that pertains to civilization of men. We learn from the Babylonian inscriptions that Anu, the Babylonian god, was also the fish god Oannes. This Anu was the king of the lower world. Scholars concur that the Bantu tribe called the Anu is the tribe of the Jews, Arabs, and Moors whose blood is mystically sealed inside the Holy Grail of the Knights Templar. Anu is the origin of Rh negative blood, and this Bantu tribe is the reason this blood type relates to the Anunnaki and the 72 Goetia demons. When the branch human species that is incapable of satanic illumination or gnosis is nearly extinct, people who are Rh negative will take the next step in the evolution. This next step deals with communing with Anunnaki envisioned as 72 Goetia demons. After experimenting with the 72 Goetia demons, Aleister Crowley said something very profound. In Magic in Theory and Practice, Crowley declares, quote, my observation of the universe convinces me that there are beings of intelligence and power of a far higher and superior quality than anything we can conceive as a human. That they are not necessarily based on cerebral and nervous structures that we know, and that the one and only chance for mankind to advance as a whole for individuals to make contact with these beings. End quote. Making a blood pact with Satan and the 72 Goetia demons is the most powerful black magic spell in the world. Without this black spell, there is no real Moorish science, and the Illuminati and the global criminal network have no reason to exist and to commit all types of murders based on Masonic symbolism and ritual. The Bokors and Mayamberos, or Illuminati agents, who believe in all red everything, quote, call the most powerful black magic spell in the world Pacto con Diablo, pact with the devil, the cannibal spell, and the Baka spell. To appreciate the most powerful black magic spell in the world, the power seeker must first gain knowledge of the Bantu demon called Baka, B-A-K-A. In the Red Voodoo sects and Palomayombe, an evil Baka spirit is the mad, hungry ghost of a Congolese cannibal, zombie, vampire, and werewolf. Baka is an ancient Jewish mystery connected to the legend of King Solomon sealing 72 demons in a pot or bottle. King Solomon built the Masonic temple so have total command of the 72 Goetia demons. A special room within the Masonic temple constructed by King Solomon held the Ark of the Covenant, and this is where blood pacts were made with Satan and the 72 Goetia demons. Even the word Ark means to bind. It is the 72 Goetia demons, or Anunnaki, that the ceremonial magician binds with the blood of Jesus, which in reality is the Jewish blood of King Solomon and the blood of the ancient Bantu, Egyptian, Sumerian priesthood revived in the new Aeon by Illuminati agents of the highest degree. I'm going to pause real quick and see if that's enough. Yeah, that should be enough. Yeah. I'll read one more page. That's 22 pages. It's the last page. In the Book of the Beginnings, Gerald Massey declares, to clear oneself of an oath was recognized form of speech with the Egyptians, a mode of convening. Quote, the word ark or oath means to bind, and end quote, after the word bind. And another one of the experts say that the type of Haitian voodoo that is the basis of the real Illuminati conspiracy and the global criminal network is derived from the Solomonic/Masonic interpretation of Baka. In The Secrets of Voodoo, Milo Rigaud declares, quote, the voodoo Baka, for the person knowing how to prepare or employ one, represents all the legions of angels and demons over which King Solomon had power. According to the voodoo tradition, Solomon was the perfect initiate, the representative of the temple. Thus, because he had in his possession a magical figure which embraced all esoteric signs, he made use of both angels and demons as he desired. End quote. Yeah, end quote. And I'm going to just finish this page off. Yep. What one finds in Haitian voodoo, one also finds in Jamaican obeah. Like Haitian voodoo, Jamaican and Trinidadian has been associated with the Masonic Lodge for as long as can be remembered. In fact, Jamaican Freemasonry begins with an Illuminati agent and Moor named Stephen Morin. Even the high and mighty Marcus Garvey was part of a Jamaican Masonic tradition rooted in Hispano-Moorish Maroon culture and obeah. In many pictures, Marcus Garvey can be seen dressed like a high-degree Freemason and Moor. Some people believe that Garvey developed his version of black nationalism within a secret society based on the Caribbean Templar movement, which is an indispensable part of the early development of the real Illuminati conspiracy and the global criminal network. The neophyte Noble Drew Ali formed his concept of Moorish science from the Masonic Templar-inspired teachings of Marcus Garvey. In the eyes of the Illuminati agents of the highest degree, Jamaican obeah, O-B-E-A-H, is pure Moorish science. And this way of viewing obeah is why many black Cubans have the very curious habit of saying that unbaptized or Jewish Palomayombe is a form of obeah. Since early colonial times, Jamaican obeah men have dressed like Andalusian Moors. They had called their necromantic black magic science and have proudly claimed to be, quote, scientific people who know how to take the quantum leap into the rotating black hole or the Kabbalistic abyss. In Central Africa, in the Caribbean, Dr. Maureen Warner Lewis informs, quote, in Jamaica, the Kaungu were known as scientific people. Many tales are told on how the old Africans could make drums beat by themselves, or rather by unseen spiritual forces. This type of feat is called Salabilongo, glossed as working obeah. When a Jamaican obeah man speaks of science, we know that he is referring to the practical Kabbalah or Moorish science. Significantly, the old Africans noted by Dr. Varner Lewis in the 18th century Jamaican records as Santans and Mohammedans, two terms customarily used to denote an Andalusian Moor who specialized in the Luciferian and Satanic system of ceremonial magic akin to obeah and Palomayombe. According to Martin Plessler, a renowned Orientalist from Germany, the Moorish use of the term science originates within the Goetic magic of medieval Spain. Thus, real Moorish science is voodoo, obeah, and Palomayombe. The branches of the ceremonial magic the Illuminati agent uses to dominate the world in the name of the Prince of Darkness. And on that note, I'm going to end right there. So what I just did was read you guys the first 23 pages of a document titled Liber Baka 303, The Confessions of a Real Illuminati Agent. And within that, obviously I just read for the last 2 hours, so there's a lot that can be discussed, but just know the correlation between Moors and Freemasons and black magic and cannibalism and all of that. All of this is not my work. These are things that I've come to, be made aware of during my journey. And my job, especially as, again, a high priest, as a chief justice, as a marshal, is to remain in alignment with the truth and the chronology of how that truth played out. So that's all I'm doing. I don't pick any sides in relation to this. My side is the truth. So with that, I give thanks to everybody that came and listened to, Moors and Freemasonry Part 2 by myself. And I'm grateful that, again, there are curious minds out here that are even seeking the truth. So on that note, again, for the record, today is 10/29/2022. It is 3:09, and I am, for the record, His Imperial Magnanimity and His Holiness, the most prudent Emperor Amaru Hunga. I am the High Priest of Wakanda Imperial Priesthood de Jure Divino. In addition, I am the Chief Justice or Chief Arbiter of the Imperial Postal Court, bond number 312918. In addition, I marshal for that court. So on that note, peace and love to all. There may be a part 3 coming out. Maybe have some discussions with somebody else about it, but who knows? All is well. And then peace and love to all. Emperor out.